All right, guys. Welcome to episode 27 of Aussies taking over the NBA. This is a Patty Mills season preview. Just don't forget to like, subscribe, share. We're on YouTube, Oz NBA Takeover, Podcast Addict, and iTunes, Aussies taking over the NBA. Follow us on Twitter. We're there. Share it, like, Facebook. Make sure you get us out there. We appreciate all the listeners who are currently downloading and listening or watching if it's on YouTube.
Yep.
Also, check out our new podcast, On the King's Dime. That's a Sydney Kings franchise special. We'll be doing those every couple of weeks leading up to the season.
Yep.
And then we'll be covering all the games and wrapping things up.
Don't forget to check. Don't forget to check out. We've already done a Deng Adele season preview for his Minnesota / Raptors
roundabout
for a contract. And then we've also done Ryan Broekhoff and Mitch Creek. So don't forget to check them out if you really want to know
Summer
about.
League, where are they now?
Yeah.
That's a good one. It's talking about where the guys that declared for the draft played in the Summer League and what actually ended up happening to them. And so go back and give that a listen if that is your thing. So we're going to talk a bit about Patty Mills today. Actually, not a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about him.
Yeah, and the Spurs.
And the Spurs.
There's a lot to talk about. Parker leaving, Manu retiring, the big trade.
Yeah.
And
it's a team in
demolition phase.
Demolition phase. I think it's just it's a team that's going through a definite changing of the guard, a transition period from old to potentially a lot younger, and drafting Lonnie Walker.
Yeah,
the 5th or the 4th.
Yeah,
Lonnie Walker, the Roman numeral. Let's just say that.
Worst hair in the draft.
Yeah, he was trying to be the Weeknd there. Just looks like a squid died on his head. All right, so we're going to go to Patty Mills. Now, Patty Mills is the stalwart of Australian basketball.
Yep.
He's been in the NBA for a decade.
10 years. This will be his 10th year, so a big year
season.
for him.
Yeah,
fantastic
definitely.
Stuff. I think Bogut was 13, and
12.
I think 12, and then Patty, I think, is next on the amount of...
And then it was Luke, I think. Luke was...
Longley, sorry, yep.
No, Luke was 9, I
10
think.
10 or 9, I
10
think.
or 9. But he's definitely up there. So he's definitely a stalwart of us in the NBA. He has been at San Antonio for his whole career, I think.
No, I think he was drafted by Portland, and then I think in his 3rd or 4th year signed for the Spurs.
Okay.
When Baines was at the Spurs, I think it was a similar time that
Baines was G League and...
Yeah, I think he went up to the Spurs around about the same time that Patty moved there, about 2011 or 2012-ish. 3 and 7. Yeah, that sounds about right. So Spurs last year, not a great season for them in terms of Spurs standards. They had all that Kawhi stuff going on. They had Greg Popovich sort of trying to rebuild their team.
A couple of older guys, really. Tony Parker was injured for most of the season. Manu was injured and then played a little bit.
And then, I think they re-signed Pau Gasol to that contract that made you sort of scratch your head and go, why have you done this? And then, obviously, with Kawhi out, they were running a lot of their offense through LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's a very sort of effective and skilled and a serviceable post player. But I think the way Spurs basketball is played traditionally, I don't think you want to be running that much of the offense through him. I think that was a real problem with their offense last year, is that losing Kawhi, they lost that extra ball handler and they lost that extra scoring option, relying on guys like Danny Green and, Kyle Anderson had to step up. Bryn Forbes had to step up a little bit. And they're both quite young guys. And I think Kyle Anderson's even sort of left now. But, they still had a 47 and 35 season and they finished 7th. Points per game, 102.7 points per game. That's got to be very low for Spurs standards in the last sort of that little peak period between 2009 and
It's
2014.
the post Tim Duncan era. It's very low. Yeah, their defense is what really set them apart.
Yeah.
From that side of the conference and really what got them to the finals. I think.
Well, they're second in the NBA, so opposition points against 99.8 points, second in the NBA. So obviously their defense was fantastic, and I think the way their roster was set up last year, it really spaced the floor well. Yeah. Like they might have had some options, some offensive options that were a little bit wonky and some issues with losing Kawhi, but I still think the system they run is obviously very effective with the group of players it has anyway. It doesn't matter how good or bad the group of players is. They're always going to get a sort of baseline performance, and they're always going to perform pretty well around that 45, 55 win mark, no matter what. It's the Spurs sort of thing. So their pace was way down as well last year. I think they were 28th in pace, 95 rating. Offensive rating, not great. Defensive rating,
good.
Very good. So it shows you that even though their offense, dumping it into LaMarcus was a lot of their offense, they still have the defensive tools and the defensive mindset, the right spacing to defend well. Pau Gasol started to get a little bit abused down the end of the season.
He's getting slow. He's slowing down.
And then
substantially.
LaMarcus Aldridge is another guy who's not a fitness freak type of player, like a freak athletic player. He is a very big guy with a lot of skill, but isn't known for his hustle and known for his grit and grind. But still a very respectable player and a very respectable post-scoring option. But I found sort of watching them at the back end of this last season, like teams were getting into him. And the more you get into him and make things physical for him, the more his performance kind of just tapered off a little bit. Where eventually they ran into the Warriors in that first round, and it took a stroke of genius from Steve Kerr to start Andre Iguodala with Curry out, and they kind of played like a brick wall type lineup with all 6'5" players in the front court. In the back court. With Iguodala, I think he's 6'7", and then Durant and Clay, who are both 6'9", 7 foot. I think it really took away Patty's ability to influence the game, because if Patty gets running, that's when their offense starts to really click. I mean,
if Patty's hitting a lot of shots, that's when they kind of push out to him to cover him, and LaMarcus can really use his post ability because essentially they were just creating 2-on-1 situations where they were double teaming LaMarcus because Patty wasn't heating up or didn't heat up at the right times. And, you know, once you're double teaming LaMarcus with the defensive talent that is the Golden State Warriors, it's hard to score and it's hard to get right.
And they're not hard doubles either. They're not it's not a blanket, just hard double LaMarcus Aldridge no matter what. It was smart doubling. Like Draymond Green's a very good help defender. And I think the way they spaced the floor with playing Iguodala at the point, it really snuffed out Patty's ability to get moving in the offense as well, creating shots, like creating space for Danny Green. You know, there were patches where Spurs sort of really broke into life, but they were very quickly sort of clawed back with the Warriors' ability to sort of stifle their offense in the backcourt. So,
Patty played all games.
Yeah, he played all games. He didn't start all the games. No. I think he rotated a little bit with not Bryn Forbes, DeJounte Murray. So obviously the Spurs last season derailed with that Kawhi injury.
And Parker quad and Rudy Gay Achilles.
Yeah, coming off his Achilles. And Rudy Gay had a decent season, not something you'd say was outstanding, but quite serviceable player. You know, a good hustler. I just don't think he had the ability to step in there and fill that Kawhi-sized hole.
No.
Which was really important for them last year, having that extra guy that can handle the ball. You know, trying to slot in a couple of young guys, probably they missed Kawhi in that aspect as well. It's shielded them a little bit. But again, their offense really sort of changed, as the pace ground to a halt. It was really a lot of just dumping it into LaMarcus.
Yeah, not a lot of ball movement. It was,
which is very
it
un-Spurs
was tough
like.
it was tough to watch. In an aggressive sense and an attacking sense. They got to where they were probably their 47 games back on some smart coaching, some smart defensive maneuvers, and taking the right teams apart. They won the games that they should have, and pipped a couple of games that they might not have won otherwise, and that's how it got them there. They had a stronger run mid-season, and they kind of tapered off towards the end and hit Golden State first round, which was never going to end well with them, even with Curry out, I don't think.
Yeah, well, I think had they run Quinn Cook up against Patty Mills, I wonder if Spurs were sort of not hoping that would happen, but I think Spurs were sort of planning for Patty Mills to really sort of get running on Quinn Cook, really sort of turbocharge their offense, get out there nice and quick, start running without just dumping the ball into LaMarcus, knowing they could go to that as a second option. But some of that Iguodala defense in that first game was just so stifling. And I wonder if it just rocked Paddy's confidence just a tiny little bit.
He is undersized for this day and age. 6 or 7 years ago, 6-foot guard was probably more towards the norm. But
well, I think a more coordinated front court might have been able to alleviate that, but LaMarcus Aldridge and Pau Gasol aren't.
Well, they just didn't play
players.
Conventional pick and roll at all. And if you're undersized, you want to play a few more, because Patty is a fantastic ball handler, good finisher, and can shoot. So you want to give either a screen chance or a conventional pick and roll. And they just didn't play it. They just dished in, and LaMarcus backed down and shot, and it went in or it didn't. And
that is what it is. I mean, if you look at Gasol, I think by the end of that series, they couldn't keep Pau Gasol on the floor. And the more you run LaMarcus Aldridge around, the kind of less and less is the effect on their offense he really
tired.
has.
He's just not. They've not got that backup center where they can take minutes away from him, LaMarcus, and have any effectiveness on offense.
Yeah, so he played 25.7 minutes per game this season, which is up from last season. I wonder if that'll stretch out a little bit more this season, mainly because they have a different structure in their roster. They actually have that player in DeRozan. Yeah,
they have that 2 or 3 ball handler, which is that extra ball handler that would take some pressure off Patty and allow him to get into some more open spaces. Yeah, I think that it takes a lot of pressure off LaMarcus. Being able to score an ISO, being able to cut, it gives the team a definite edge. I think they go from I think they probably stay a 47 team because LeBron comes in.
Yeah.
And it just gets more stacked, and, Jokic and, even the Nuggets are knocking on that door. But if without DeRozan, they go down to a 30 team, I think.
Yeah, I think they really fall out if they didn't get a decent enough piece for Kawhi in that trade.
Yeah, that trade was a fantastic trade. But I would take that trade any day of the week if I was Spurs. I think it was really good, really well done by Popovich in being able to offload really what was a hazard.
Yeah, for their situation, I mean, you look at his production and on paper what he gives the Spurs. I don't think you could ever trade to replicate that. Like at peak Kawhi, I don't think you could have traded Kawhi at his value to get back something that was similar to peak Kawhi. But at the same time, getting DeRozan isn't to me. It's an interesting. Like I want to see him play in that Spurs system because he's such a talented offensive player who can create his own shot. Off the dribble. Really, really work in a properly spaced offense that rewards your IQ as a basketball player. Like, I want to see that. Not to say that Toronto weren't trying to do that, but Greg Popovich is like a basketball mastermind.
Yes.
And I really think he's going to set up DeRozan and really I think he's going to have an outstanding year. And obviously, if he doesn't have a fantastic year, I still think it's going to be interesting to watch him play just to see how Greg Popovich integrates him into their offense. Because he's a dangerous weapon, obviously not as good as Kawhi. Scoring-wise, defensive-wise, obviously not as good as Kawhi either. But at the same time, they're both different types of players that are both very talented players that are excellent players to watch when played under great coaches.
Yes.
Like, obviously, you wouldn't want DeRozan to go to the Timberwolves and then all they do is toss him the ball and just say, just go get buckets all night. Obviously, you don't want to see that. You want to see the best players playing under Greg Popovich. And, yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do this season. So their off-season sort of came and went pretty quickly. They had 2 picks. One in the first round, they drafted Lonnie Walker, as we said.
Lonnie Walker, the Roman numeral.
Iron Throne hair, as I've dubbed him. And they also drafted Chamiza Metu at 49, which, could be sneaky good pick.
Yeah, okay.
Pretty solid. So Rudy Gay declined his option at the back end of last season for $8 million, and then he ended up re-signing a bit further down the track. Danny Green also opted into his player option of $10 million before he was involved in that trade. Joffrey Laverne left to play in Turkey in Fenerbahce. Shout out to Europe, which I'm going to try and watch a little bit of this year.
Yep.
And then Kyle Anderson, who was an unrestricted free agent, he had an offer sheet of 3 years, $37.1 million, which was matched by the Grizzlies, and he ended up signing for the Grizzlies, which is good for him.
Yep.
I think he was one of the guys who sort of struggled with Kawhi out, having to shoulder a bit more of the responsibility on offense. And then I think his defense sort of, without that spacing, it sort of struggled a little bit.
Yep, fell apart.
So that's one aspect where he, Tony Parker, and Kawhi, as well as Manu Ginobili, might open up a more conventional door for Patty, whether or not he sort of rotates with DeJounte Murray, playing half and half, or whether he doesn't start. Look, whether Murray starts and Patty comes off the bench, or they switch and they mix and match. I think they're going to run a better style that's going to make Patty a more influential player on their team with DeRozan. Just getting a couple of those guys out of the way. Obviously, Manu retiring is a big blow for them.
It is, but again, he's 40. What does a 40-year-old bring to a team other than the Dallas Mavericks?
Yeah, and even like watching Dirk play is even a struggle.
But again, that's a team that's not really destined to do much this year, and therefore it's kind of like a stalwart year. Thank you for your service. We're going to give you another year to have a good time kind of thing. Whereas they can't afford to do that in the West.
No, and I don't. Well, they're in the West, but they can't afford to. The Spurs can't afford to do that because they're in that real top half dogfight. Whereas Dallas have a couple of years, you're right, to just sort of spread it out a little bit, get comfortable.
See what Doncic can do, see what Brokoff can do, and take it from there.
Yeah, so Rudy Gay signed a 1 year, $10 million deal. It removed $7 million of dead cap money off their books, which is pretty good for them. Bryn Forbes signed a 2 year, $6 million deal, and then your man,
Bellinelli,
signing a 2 year, $12 million deal.
Good pickup. One of the best catch and shoot players in the league. That's all it is. Defensively, probably slightly weak, but again, in a good system, I'm sure they can hide him, but fantastic catch and shoot player.
I think that's a big part of Popovich's sort of ability to hide that aspect of your game, and put you into the offense. Because I think Brett Brown did that quite well for Bellinelli last year. I think.
Oh yeah, they went on that crazy run when he came on board, and Ilyasova, obviously, Ilyasova is a defensive machine. But Bellinelli, he's not undersized, which is good. So what is he, 6'6"? When you're looking at Redick, who's 6'3", he's undersized and therefore gets picked off quite easily on the defense, whereas Bellinelli is at least a bigger body. But lateral movement, probably not the quickest, getting on in age, and will get outdone by a better three. That's really what it is. But again, in that system, easily hidden and a definite scoring option. That adds 10 points to your team.
Yep.
Easily.
A night, yeah.
At a night, easily 10 points onto whatever he takes out of. He's easily a 20-point player. So
I think he'll replace Danny Green as that wing threat, from 3. But I think Danny Green's probably a better defender. So it'll be interesting to see how Greg Popovich sort of changes their offense around a little bit just to sort of slot him in there. Dante Cunningham signed a 1-year, $2.4 million deal after being waived by the Nets. And then Tony Parker signed for Charlotte, and that was a big sort of big departure for them, I think, experience-wise. Breaking up the band, obviously he wasn't the last one to go. Obviously, Manu Ginobili retiring was the last guy to leave.
Yeah.
From that Duncan, Tony Parker and Manu crew, which was an experienced sort of crew that was there to sort of bring through the young guys as well. I wonder how much of an effect that'll have on Paddy.
Yeah, I think it adds minutes to Paddy's day. It definitely does. And gives him more opportunities to run more of the offense, which potentially he never had in the past. It's only been really the last 2 years when Tony Parker's been injured.
Yep.
That Paddy's really stepped up and started a lot of games and gotten a lot of minutes, and is more of that kind of 3-point threat.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be important that if Patty Mills can sort of up his minutes to around 30 a game this season, whether they go with DeJounte Murray or they go with traditionally running a proper traditional offense with Patty Mills, I think it'll change the way he plays as well going into that World Cup year, because he's obviously a very traditional point guard who is unselfish, and he's not a scoring option that he looks for himself. Like, he looks to get other guys involved, make sure he's, assisting the offense in his best way possible, which would be great for him.
He was a beast in Rio playing for the Boomers.
He was
Absolute
fantastic,
beast.
yeah. And that's, I think, his best quality is how unselfish he is and how he wants to get everyone involved and make sure people are involved in the offense. The offense is in rhythm, which is important for a point guard. I think young guys sort of struggle a little bit with that aspect, and that's one area I thought last year where Murray sort of struggled just a little bit getting their offense going, a little bit happy to throw the ball into LaMarcus a little bit too early. So hopefully Popovich can sort of space the floor a little bit better with DeRozan, change it up a little bit, because I think that'll bring more out of Paddy as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Which brings us on to, obviously, then the big trade between Toronto and San Antonio, which was Kawhi and Danny Green for DeMar DeRozan and Jakob Poeltl. So that's obviously a massive gravitational franchise.
It was the only move they could make. They knew Kawhi wanted out. They were going to get nothing for him come year 5 as his contract was up. And this was the only way to get something out of it. And I think they probably got a deal way bigger than it should have been. I think that's realistically, I think Toronto had taken a humongous gamble, a potentially franchise ending gamble, when they will be nothing if Kawhi leaves next year, like for the next 4 or 5 years. I think they're just lucky the East is so weak that they potentially can stay in that mid-table. But then that doesn't help them in the long term because they haven't got those tanking picks. I think that it was a very, very good move from Popovich. I think he will run well with the Spurs and give that quality second ball handling option and isolated scoring option.
Yeah.
It's a good team. It's a better team than last year. They've improved their team dramatically.
I think it gives them a little bit of fresh blood too. Last year, a couple of those teams felt a little bit stale. And obviously the Warriors have said, it kind of started to feel a little bit stale with the guys that we had. We moved some people on. Now we've sort of, rearranged the furniture. I wonder how much of an effect that has on the Spurs. Sort of losing Parker, Ginobili, and Kyle Anderson, and then obviously probably getting back the best players that they could get back is an interesting sort of refresher for your franchise. I mean, you look at that Cavs team, we were sort of talking about it. The Cavs team, even if LeBron would have stayed, it still would have felt like the same lazy sort of, like you can't clear the cobwebs out of that. Like him going to LA reinvigorates an LA franchise and plugs him into their system or their franchise and gets everyone else fired up in a different way that would have happened if he had just stayed in Cleveland.
If he would have stayed in Cleveland, it just would have been LeBron 42 minutes a game. Well, so he'd win himself 40 games a year. Kevin Love might have a good night, and J.R. Smith might have a feast, and there's your other 12 games. And, you get to 52, and then, you play LeBron post. It's boring.
Well, it's just so comfortable. And that's part of the reason why I like the fact that he's gone to LA is because he's now going to reinvigorate the franchise as opposed to the other way around where he was building a team to reinvigorate the franchise he's at, which I felt like they couldn't really
paid
do.
So much for those duds. Like George Hill's on $17 million a season. Can't shoot the fucking ball. Like it's
and Rodney Hood.
Oh, Rodney Hood. Oh,
even
Tristan Thompson's a bit of a beast when he gets in beast mode. He's pretty good as a center. Hasn't got fantastic finishing moves, but he's one to work on. Obviously, Kevin Love's a good player, but the rest of the team, there's no depth. There's no shooting ability. Kyle Korver, okay, maybe, but
but
Kyle,
he's like 38.
37 or something.
Yeah. And it just felt like the more players they brought to Cleveland, the more it was about, oh wow, I'm playing in Cleveland. This is great, and less about actually tangibly reinvigorating the franchise with players, like drawing people in.
Dad's army for the first half of the season with Derrick Rose, Dwayne Wade.
Yeah.
It's just like it didn't make any sense at all, that franchise. It was an eclectic mix of players that shouldn't have been playing together, and the only glue was LeBron.
Yeah.
That's the glue.
So that's where it's a similar situation to the Spurs, is that they've chiseled away such a big piece. Obviously, LeBron going to the Lakers is similar in the fact that there's a big piece coming here and we have to fit him in, and it's going to get everyone going. And I think it's such a good piece to slot into. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing how DeRozan plays in that offense. Just as a basketball purist standpoint, I want to watch him try and integrate with that offense because it's such a well-oiled machine. Great defensive talent, great spacing of the floor, coached really well. Greg Popovich isn't going to run him into the ground. He's not he's a hard worker, but at the same time, he's a smart tactician. He wants them to work smarter, not harder. So I'm really looking forward to seeing DeRozan play in that team.
Indeed.
I don't know if there's anything else we need to say about that trade.
No, I think that's it. I think it's well documented in the basketball world. I think we just need to see some games and see what this team can do in action and where everyone kind of slots into it.
Of course, they got Jakob Poeltl in that trade too. He can shoot the ball as a center. I think pretty solid. But yeah, like we've said, I think that franchise, San Antonio, needed a little bit like Toronto, needed just the pull the cord and that's it. Like we'll do these huge changes and change everything up because, like the Cleveland scenario, just becomes the same thing. The few odd players here and there. This guy, that guy. Suddenly, it's 4 years down the track, and you're just like, "What are we all doing here?" Like, there's nothing happening, type of thing. So
they kind of lost their way post Duncan. Realistically,
yeah, but that's understandable. I think the game was changing a little bit too. There was that peak LeBron where they had a real sort of we're going against peak LeBron, and that's the big rivalry. Then suddenly Duncan retires, LeBron leaves and goes back to Cleveland, and in that vacuum, it changed to the Warriors suddenly now have their system really starting to rise, and it really swamped a lot of those other Western Conference teams. They kind of came out of nowhere. and the style of basketball they were playing was not very conducive to building your team quickly to try and combat it.
Yeah.
Like it felt like we can't gimmick our way around this team. They're too all around to fight against. Like, you know, we can't just jab in the one spot and open up their eye. We've got to find something really roster altering to fix to make sure that we stay at the top of the conference. Yeah. So I think both franchises needed that. Toronto and San Antonio needed that. Like, sometimes you've just got to pull the cord and go, right, that's it. We're going to have to just blow it up and start again. Obviously, they don't have to tank. They've still got Popovich. They've still got a lot of good pieces they can build around.
Yeah.
And DeRozan. So I hope
there's no tanking in that team.
No.
They're going to be fighting for a top 8. I see them staying between 45 and 40. I'm going to say 40 and 47 wins.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of see the team at this year.
Well, you still got a couple of weeks until we do over-unders, where we go through every team and rank them. So we'll think about that. I think too, between 40 and 50 wins. Worst case scenario, best case scenario, DeRozan has an absolute blinder of a year, and they're 50 plus, sort of closer to 60 maybe. But you can't write the Spurs off, man.
No.
Like, as long as Popovich is there,
you can't.
And he went through some personal stuff last year, where his wife passing and stuff like that. That may change his perspective also. That's another thing you got to sort of look at that's non-basketball related, or non-on the court related. And I think is he going to coach the USA team, I think, at the World Cup and the Olympics, I believe.
Okay.
I think he's going to be the Team USA coach. So I wonder how much that'll have.
How much that'll affect him. Because he's not a spring chicken. Yeah.
He doesn't seem to be the kind of guy that will just ride it out. Like, he seems to be very involved in everything all the time, no matter what. Plugged in relentlessly to improving the franchise. So obviously that's going to have an effect on their roster and the way they play. It's not going to get left in a pile in a mess that you have to sort out later. So, which is great for Patty, coming back to Patty Mills. Hopefully he can really sort of push in and get in there, and give him a bigger role. They give him, more of the keys to the offense, because coming up to the World Cup and coming up to the Olympics in the next 2 years, it's going to be a massive, massive thing.
Indeed. So,
and then Manu obviously retiring, which was the other big thing. I don't think production-wise they lose too much. He was probably good for about 6 minutes out of his 15 he was playing.
Yeah.
I felt like in that Warriors series, we talked about it before, where the longer he was on the court, the worse he got.
Yeah, he's definitely the right time to go out.
Yeah.
Definitely the right time. Mono,
great career, definitely a Hall of Famer.
Oh, yeah, for
Fantastic.
sure.
He's been a great servant for their franchise, done great things for Argentinian basketball. He'll be remembered as one of the greats for sure. Indeed. Not just for Spurs, I think.
No, for the NBA as well.
The game itself. And they signed Quincy Pondexter, which leaves a roster looking like this. So Jakob Poeltl, Pau Gasol, LaMarcus Aldridge, Dante Cunningham, Rudy Gay, Davis Bertans. I think Davis Bertans re-signed, I believe, this year, I think. Or maybe I'm confusing it with Joffrey Laverne. I always confuse those two. Then Lonnie Walker, they drafted. DeMar DeRozan. Would be interesting to see how he goes. Bellinelli, Bryn Forbes, Patty Mills, DeJounte Murray, and Derek White. So their possible starting lineup looks like LaMarcus Aldridge, Pau Gasol, Rudy Gay, DeRozan, Mills.
Okay.
That's pretty solid.
It's a solid start. It's a solid starting lineup. I think that is, that'll take them to the playoffs this year.
Yeah. If Rudy Gay can stay healthy, I think he'll have a solid year. He'll work really well in tandem with DeMar DeRozan, and then some good wrinkles for Paddy to fit in there, running some pick and roll. The biggest problem really is Pau Gasol. I wonder if they play Jakob Poeltl at power forward.
Or even Lonnie.
Or even Lonnie Walker or Davis Bertans a little bit more this season. I just think that's that one spot where it's not quite great caliber.
Yeah, I think Power will get found out quite a bit, and I think they'll quickly move to get Lonnie some minutes in that position.
Yeah, so...
He's a top 15 pick.
Yeah, Lonnie Walker. I don't know if he's ready, though.
He may not be ready. He may...
Spurs ready,
He's not Spurs ready, but hey, big off-season, good training camp. You never know.
Yeah. So, yeah, just that power forward spot, I think, is that spot where maybe they need, like, over the next couple of seasons, they might need to strengthen that just a little bit. But, who knows what they go into the season with. So, Paddy's 4 years into his $49 million deal. It expires in 2021, and where he will be 33 years old, which will be sort of getting on for a point guard. He'll become an unrestricted free agent. I'm not sure if he'll be still at the Spurs by then.
I don't think so. I think we might... I'm hoping to see a return to Australian basketball. The NBL's got a couple of years to prove that it's the place to be, potentially one or two more teams. If not after that contract, but he might stay in the NBA but I'd definitely like him to see give something back to Australian basketball and see him back here.
Maybe at 33, maybe that's... Do you reckon that's late or early?
For a point guard?
Yeah.
Probably 1 or 2 years early.
Yeah.
But again, with the way the NBA is going into that more point forward position, we don't really know who's going to be drafted over the next 2 years in that point guard position and what size they'll be. And so are they conventional, 6 foot to 6'3", or are they all going to be, are they the Ben Simmons model? And if they're the Ben Simmons model, it's that shift in the NBA again, a point guard who can defend to the 5. You just don't know. And he comes back a bit early and, he gets in it here.
Yeah. So what are you expecting from him this season?
More minutes.
Yeah.
Stronger showing, building up to the World Cup and also to the Olympics the following year. And getting to the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely.
Taking them to the promised land.
I hope he has a good, strong year where he plays about 30 minutes a game. And I think it will be, like I keep going back to DeRozan, but I think it will be interesting to see how he really develops his game with a guy like DeRozan, who's a pure scorer. Like Kawhi Leonard was always a very, very good scorer, but I felt where both players, DeRozan and Kawhi, were elite scorers, I just felt like DeRozan was more of like a pure scorer, like just such a dangerous mover, smooth. Kawhi Leonard's got all the tools and all the defensive ability, but I just felt like DeMar DeRozan is a much smoother player, which will be interesting to see how it fits with Patty Mills running those actions up at the top of the key. He's going to get a lot of DeMar drives and then Patty left at the 3-point line wide open, or DeMar drives and then Patty runs to the corner and gets a wide open 3. So I hope his 3-point percentage goes up because I don't think he shot that well
this season. No, he was hot and cold. It was feast or famine. It's very JR kind of esque feast or famine. But again, in a system that doesn't give you a lot of open shots this year, and kicking into LaMarcus, there wasn't a lot of time.
No,
and LaMarcus is very much like Joel Embiid. Sometimes when he gets in that kind of post scoring one single minded, he tends not to kick it out too much, and give the guy the wide open 3. So maybe a little bit more of that this year as well. But I think DeRozan will add that aspect, and Bellinelli will add that aspect as well. I think that's what we're forgetting here. The dude is a catch and shoot genius. Like, he does not need to put the ball on the floor to score.
Yes,
cool.
And health, mate. Health. I really hope he stays healthy for that.
He will. He's had a good
World
run.
Cup.
Good run.
Touch wood.
Yep.
And yeah, that's about it. So hopefully he has a good training camp and they start the season pretty strong.
Indeed.
And
we are wrapping it up.
Yep. So we've got a Bucks. We're going to do the Bucks after this.
Correct.
And then we've got Utah. Utah, very big dark horse in the West, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
And then Philly to finish episode 30, the big 3-0.
The Ben Simmons and Drew Bolden experience.
Mm.
That's going to be a good one. That's going to be some really dissection of what Philly brings to the East and how they can overcome Boston.
Yeah.
And then overcome the NBA. Like, it's just, I don't think they've got the team quite yet, but again, I think they've got some of the top talent in the league. They have, at this point, the best center.
Yeah.
By far. Joel Embiid is a machine.
Mm.
But yeah, that'll be good to wrap up and talk about.
Yeah. In terms of their balance, I think maybe they've moved away from having a really balanced squad that they had at the back end of last year. I'm interested to see how both of these teams, Spurs and Philly, they have different structured parts of their roster to sort out. So I wonder how a lot of teams sort of in the last few years copied that Warriors blueprint, tried to change the way they play, but Philly and the Spurs have sort of have kept the way they play structured. They have a good big man. They have solid guards who can shoot and do everything, put the ball on the floor. You know, dynamic point guard who can run all different types of things, even if Ben Simmons can't shoot. You know, that doesn't sort of matter.
Yeah. Well, this is the food for thought this year. If Ben Simmons can shoot and Fultz can play as a second ball handler and shoot,
then it's on. Lights out.
It's lights out
for
really.
The league.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, you've got two guys that and from, you know, both looking at both kind of in the off season, Fultz has completely rebuilt his shot, and Simmons is looking ever increasingly dangerous. So it'll be very interesting. And let's not forget, you got guys Covington, Saric, McConnell. You've got really good depth.
Korkmaz.
Furkan Korkmaz.
Yeah. He had one good
good
game
40 and done.
40 and done.
I've had my game.
Fantastic.
All right, guys, so we'll leave it to it, but we'll come back with Milwaukee, and we'll be wrapping up Thon and Delhi.
Yep.
And
like, share, and subscribe if you've gotten this far. We really appreciate it. Thanks for listening. It's really important that you like, share, and subscribe. Give us feedback. Tell us what you want to hear. Tell us if we're terrible or if we're great and you enjoy it. We really appreciate any feedback you guys are going to give us. And we will catch you in the next episode.
See ya.